Hello, live streamers. Thanks for your patience. We're just allowing a few stragglers to come into the room. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. We'll be right back with you. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for tuning in if you're live streaming. Before we launch in, I just have a couple of housekeeping requests and some information for everyone. First off, if you're in the room, if you would be so kind as to not only silence your cell phones, but turn off Wi-Fi. We want to preserve as much bandwidth as we can for the live stream, and in the evenings, bandwidth recalibrates and is harder to come by, particularly when you're close to a neighborhood setting. So we just want to be mindful of that. If you are watching on the live stream, we are aware that you are not going to be able to see the slides that we talk through this evening. Once we get to the actual presentation, Amreen will post a link in the comments section where you can actually link to the slides as we go through them and view them on your computer as we present here. That link will be deactivated at the conclusion of the presentation, but you'll at least be able to follow along as we talk. No looking ahead. Honor system. Thank you again all for coming and being a part of this. Tonight culminates quite a bit of work, but I don't want to talk about that yet. Because tonight is really about telling a story. And the slightly ironic part about that is it's a story that we are all co-authoring together. It's not a story that any of us began. It's not a story that any of us will end or conclude. This is a story that we are co-authoring through our individual and collective choices that have led us to be here in this room together tonight, to be a part of Austin Montessori School, to choose a different way of looking at child development, perhaps than was our own experience as developing children, knowing that there may be a better way to do things, a better you, a better us, a better humanity. Looking at it from that broadened perspective, we realize this story actually began thousands of years ago. More specific to our purposes, our story begins over 100 years ago with Dr. Montessori's work, which we've talked about together many times before. Panning in even further, the work of Donna Bryant Gertz when she began Austin Montessori School in 1967 in an abandoned army barracks in St. Edward's University. The school began then in a 1 or 2 classroom organization, and through careful development and intention and cultivation and commitment and deepening and refining orientation and practice has developed what it has become today. My connection to this part of the story actually began in the year 2000 when I began my own Montessori journey. And then upon going deeper into Montessori, going into Montessori training, actually becoming connected with Austin Montessori School in the year 2002, because everyone in the Montessori world has heard of Austin Montessori School. True story. Knew what it was back then. And my more pronounced part of the story began almost 5 years ago to the day, 6 years ago, really, if we start communication between me and the school. But the school has evolved since 1967 through many different iterations, configurations, campuses, to become the school that you know it today. Since I came here, we've continued that sort of tradition, if you will, of intentionality with regards to our practice here, filtering every different choice that we make, whether it's how to refine a process in a room, where to place a shelf, where to put a trash can. It all has to do with what's best for the child. Why? A better you, a better us, a better humanity, right? This is a lofty, lofty morsel of a larger tale that we are all intentionally creating together that's led us to be here tonight. And we want to carry that same level of intention, thoughtfulness, deepening orientation, and commitment mutually so that we can continue to co-author the story of Austin Montessori School into the future. The cool thing about that is you get to kind of execute the plan while you're drafting it all at the same time, and what's not fun in that, right? But I thought to begin this evening that we would reconnect to the mission of our school. So if you'll bear with me just a moment. The mission of Austin Montessori School is to guide the intellectual and character development of each child along a path towards his full and unknown potential. We strive to cultivate passion and respect, independence and belonging, and freedom and self-discipline in rich academic and social environments that are designed for each plane of development and honor the complementary needs of the individual and the group. We value, typo, an educational setting that is inclusive and recognizes the authentic nature of the child and nurtures a reverence for the organic order of the universe. Through parent and staff education, we work to develop a school and family culture that preserves and protects a healthy childhood. Our aim is to serve children possessing an ample range of temperaments and a variety of learning styles and rates. At the same time, we seek to avoid pathologizing and labeling the normal range of children's behaviors and differences in learning. We are dedicated to Montessori's mission of world peace through human development. I apologize to the live streamers. I cannot be tethered behind a podium. I must move, so I will. Because now I want to really hone in and tell a story. And that is the story of how what you're about to see all came together. And it really began with my arrival. And I don't know how many of you know this, I was actually hired in 2013, came in 2014. So started communicating with the school over the course of that last year that I was still in Charlotte. And came and actually started a few weeks earlier than I was supposed to, just to begin to become oriented to the school, the people in it. Got a lot of time talking with Don and Donna about sort of their appraisal of where things were, how we got here, where we saw things going. Donna and I were sitting down in my office one day. This is mid-July 2014, just kind of shooting the breeze, telling stories. I was telling stories about my history of Montessori, and she was telling stories of the school and so forth. And I said, Donna, what would you think about starting a high school? And she's like, it'd be a great idea. And she immediately walked to Dawn's office and said, Gray's going to start a high school in 2 years. Learned something about Donna and storytelling during that experience. But, in the years since, I hope you've had this experience, but one of the layers of intention that we've had is to really cultivate connection within the school community, connection internally with the staff, and sort of, holding forth our intention of mutual orientation in our practice, our connection with our parents through broadening our communication channels, opening ourselves up so that we can all be mutually oriented, I'm going to use those words a lot, and moving in the same direction. All towards the ends of co-creating the future together. Because the reality is, as I said in the beginning, we didn't begin this story and we're not going to end it, but we're writing it right now. And we are the stewards of Austin Montessori School through the choices that you made for your children, where you found yourselves connected to a community, a broader whole, and it's that whole collectively together, the future of that entity that we're going to talk about tonight. Specifically speaking, in the summer of 2014, the Board of Trustees made the decision to undertake what's called, in our parlance, long-range strategic planning for the school. Now, that should not suggest to you that before, the school was just untethered and going in any willy-nilly direction. Nothing could be further from the truth. But the school had not stepped back and taken stock of its current state whole and intentionally, through work of all of its constituents, crafted a plan towards a future state and future vision of the school and set forth the steps to get there. And that's the decision that the board made that summer to execute that undertaking. It began by the formation of a committee who solicited proposals from 4 different independent school consulting firms that specialize in partnering with schools for strategic planning. That process, we received proposals. We submitted follow-up questions to each group. They answered the questions. That was followed up by an extensive phone interview with each of the consulting firms. It was a very, very thorough process because we were very careful in our vetting because we wanted to find a firm that we felt like understood our organization in all of its glorious nuances and could partner with us effectively towards the ends that we had set forth from the very beginning. Ultimately, our school chose Ian Simmons and Associates out of Portland, Oregon. And thus the process began. Over the course of it wasn't 2014, what did I just say? Thank you. 2017. See, I caught myself. I found consciousness somewhere in there. It was 2017. Because gosh, that would have taken a really long time to make this plan. It's a long process. So over the course of the fall and into the spring, we worked closely with Ian's firm as he got to know the school, both on the board level and the administrative level, in what we called the planning to plan phase, where we were providing him all kinds of information about the school historically, admissions records, attrition records, board reports from me, all the things that they could do to orient themselves to our school, its operations, its processes, its history, even before stepping foot on campus. And the actual planning component consisted of Ian visiting with our school 6 different times over the course of 2018. That began, it got pushed back. We missed one visit because of some snow that didn't really happen. And starting in February, the board formed a steering committee of 11 members that worked very closely with Ian throughout the entire process. Ian came through for 6 different site visits, the first of which on the ground, he got to meet a lot of the people in the administration and the board that he had been reading about or learning about through the information that we sent, and met with the steering committee, and through 5 subsequent visits, went through the planning process. At about visit number 3, the work group broadened into what we called the steering committee, and then some working groups with additional representation from various constituencies to do some of the actual roll your sleeves up, brainstorming, planning, and so forth. Everyone participated in the data gathering phase, which occurred late fall 2017 through the SWOT analysis survey. People participated in phone interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that we were looking for when we were vetting the proposals was a very thorough, measured process and a highly inclusive process, because we felt that was important. This needs to be a plan that we all co-created, and that's what we got. So in late fall of last year, 2018, we finally, after completing the committee work and sending several drafts back and forth between Ian's firm and our school, we finally got the final draft of our strategic initiatives and priorities for the board to vote on. In a very thorough 4-hour meeting on a Monday evening in December, the board carefully considered all of the aspects of the documents that Ian submitted in the plan and voted in principle to approve what the committee work, the committee work in partnership with Ian's firm put together to craft the strategic future of the school. Then we took that information and we started crafting concrete implementation plans to set forth on this new journey. So tonight, what we hope to do is to unveil to you what those strategic priorities are in the first section of the presentation. Then we want to walk you through the implementation plan and how we're going to begin executing what some of those strategic priorities are. We felt, however, it was important in keeping with our mission, because much of what you're going to see, another word you're going to hear very frequently tonight, or at least it's my intention to use very frequently, but I'm going to just put it out there now, even if it's the only time I use it. Mission imperative, right? And our mission is wide-reaching and has far, far-reaching aims. But we wanted to begin and filter everything else in our plan, whether it be a strategic priority, an implementation step, whatever, filter it through an overarching vision statement that really defines what we see as the future direction of Austin Montessori School. And here it is. To be a connected, cohesive, sustainable school community that supports the optimal development of children and families from prenatal through 18 years of age. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you. And let me say something here too. And I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about while I'm talking about it. You know, there's lots of ways to look at evolving into a future state, or expanding or contracting or not. Expanding for the sake of expanding, launching new programs for whatever reasons that you think, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have been very, very carefully considerate and intentional about that. And we have been filtering all of these decisions and came to this vision statement out of what we consider to be a mission imperative. Because we're here because we believe in the child. We believe very much in what we do. We have a certain orientation towards child development. We have an associated philosophy and practice and pedagogy that we have seen be effective over and over and over again for over 100 years for thousands of children, irregardless of culture, ethnicity, nation. It is universal in its application. It is effective in its application. And if we aren't offering it to as many folks as we can across the developmental continuum, we are falling short of what I consider to be our mission imperative. That's what it is. I'm going to roll now. So the way that we're going to divide this up, we want to look at the plan and the priorities both vertically and horizontally. Okay, the vertical view is largely going to display Ian's work and the strategic priorities and imperatives that came back from our work there. I want to be clear about something before we go into here because there's a lot of information to share. What we're sharing tonight is very, very much an overview. There are a lot more specifics and subcategories and sub-goals and sub-steps to the plan and each initiative that are not listed here tonight just because we did not want to overwhelm you with so much information. But I do believe that you will walk away with it oriented to the overall framework and the direction that we're going as a school. So we're going to begin vision statement re-articulated. We're going to begin by looking at our strategic priorities. Now, the thing about looking at these, you need to be aware there's going to be a lot of consultant speak, sort of professional language in this that may not necessarily translate to the way that we think about what we do. That's coming in the second section. But essentially, in all of the information that we gathered from you, from us, in the planning to plan phase, current state of the school, what we need to respond to, we need to look at, and future planning, where we see ourselves going. The plan was divided, and this part has been shared with you before, into three broad, the priorities, were divided into three broad categories. The other thing that you're going to see about this is every single thing in here is interdependent and interrelated. There's so much crossover and overlap because we are an organic human system, okay? So you should know that if you're in the room, each of you this evening is going to get a brochure that outlines the strategic priorities that we're going to go through. The only difference in what you're getting on the PowerPoint and this is there's a letter from me talking about the process in the brochure. If you're live streaming, these will be available to you in the two different offices, but you're going to walk out of here with these. So, moving through, shall we? Or do you want me to keep setting it up and keeping you in suspense a little longer? Okay. All right. Category number 1, deepen the student and parent experience. Okay. Now, that encompasses at the highest level these three broad priorities. Develop a clear mission, vision, core values, and philosophy statements, as well as craft, implement, and embody a comprehensive plan to infuse these elements throughout the school community. Secondly, craft and implement a clear and cohesive practice of communication across the entire community. If you were here for the evening of the town hall and saw the SWOT analysis, when we looked at weaknesses and/or opportunities, both internally where the staff had their responses and externally where the parents had their responses, you may recall there was a bar graph that showed horizontally frequency of response. And if you read the graph from right to left, they were all real small and low. And there was one real big one right here, and it was communication, both sides. So that made the plan. And identify and address areas of strength and opportunity in diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice within the community. Deepen the student and parent experience. Secondly, optimize enrollment configuration and capacity in line with the competitive marketplace. That's a lot of consultant speak, but we'll unpack it a little further. Here, reading through briefly, conduct a strategic review of all campuses to determine enrollment feasibility for the next decade. Now, that doesn't have just to do, that has to do with the campuses, their location, the surrounding communities, the changing demographics, birth rates, all the things that you might go into, what can inform both the current and future state of Austin Montessori School based on the ever-evolving and changing landscape in Austin, right? Explore program expansion to support all day, all year at other levels. Create a facility master plan that optimally utilizes current facilities and meets future programmatic needs. Implement programs to fully support the first plane of development, ages 0 to 6. Implement programs to fully support the third plane of development, which is 12 to 18. And identify additional extracurricular programs that find the intersection between our mission and the market. Moving to category 3. Clarify our role in education and the broader community. The first goal that you saw under the first two goals under the first category had to do with clarification and articulation and embodiment of our mission and values and our communication in our internal Austin Montessori community. This is more about our external Austin Montessori school community. Create clarity in our identity, forward-facing identity, what we stand for and what makes us distinct. Establish community affairs plans that will enhance our presence at large, well-known events in Austin to collaborate and connect with local institutions to raise awareness of mindful Montessori. Establish a research-informed multi-platform marketing plan. Maximize our use of alumni for purposes of community outreach, networking, and proof of performance. And continue to cultivate AMS thought leadership in the local and global Montessori community. These, at the highest level, are the 3 broad categories of strategic priorities. Now, if you were to do a drill down on any one of them, there are a lot of subcategories and implications and orientation there. And so when we approved all of these, and as I said to you before, our internal planning documents that we got from Ian, there's a lot more detail herein, but this captures it categorically. And we felt like it absolutely captured on the macro level the things that we needed to turn our attention to as a school, and it began to articulate a future state for the school. But we were left thinking about, okay, so how do we get there? And where do we go from here? How do we set our intentions? How do we make the plan? How do we execute the plan? And the first piece was to synthesize all of this into a clear and coherent vision statement, which I think we succeeded at. Now, let me show you the actual plan. Okay, so just a few things to understand about how this plan is organized. First of all, it is designed to define and articulate a future state of Austin Montessori School. It is a 5-year plan with 10-year implications, okay? We have divided the plan into 2 temporal phases, 2 phases. Phase 1, which encompasses spring 2019, right now, through June 2021. Phase 2, June 2021 through June 2024 and beyond. And the plan will be prioritized and divided into annual goals each year to be reevaluated at the end of the year. And best practice in strategic planning for schools. Once you go down this road, it is designed to be an iterative and repetitive process, meaning you typically craft a 5 to 7 year plan. You conduct yourselves in terms of executing it as such, setting annual goals and reevaluating at the end of each year. But by year 3 or 4, you're ready to completely go through the process again and craft another plan for the next 5 to 7 years. So it's overlapping. And so it's a dynamic, evolving system that is taking the information gathered, whatever you've done along the way, and rolling it into a more comprehensive, cohesive future state. Because in year 4, the landscape is going to look, feel, and we're going to be thinking a lot differently than we are here at year 1, because we're going to have gone through a lot of this together. Does that make sense? Okay. So what we found effective in looking at the strategic priorities is like, okay, how can we reclassify some of the elements in this plan, going back to what I was saying before about so many overlapping categories and interdependent categories. And I mean, just as a function of being a school system, this is how it works. We felt like we needed to recategorize and reorganize some of the priorities into concrete categories that we could work on actually as a plan. So we created 4 broad planning categories with associated strategic goals, and they are as follows. Programs, Evaluate, enhance, and implement programs to deepen the experience of the child through all planes of development. Okay? Facilities. Create a facility master plan that optimally utilizes current facilities and meets future programmatic needs. Communication and connection. Clarify, embody, and promote Austin Montessori School's mission. And then sustainability. To ensure all aspects of Austin Montessori School's operations are optimized for current and future states. So now what we're going to look at and go through in relatively detailed fashion are each of these categories and their associated initiatives over the course of phase 1, the next 2 years of the plan. Okay? So here's this is a 2-year representation, spring 2019 through 2021. Don't even worry about the details yet, because we're going to do a deeper dive in each one of these categories and then re-reference the master list here so that you can see how all of the things are working in conjunction with one another, how they're interrelated and interdependent, but we want to articulate each one of them separately so that we can see them distinctly, okay? So we're going to begin with programs. Now, one thing that you should know is as we concluded the planning process, the process for planning really concluded last July. It was kind of refinement after then. You didn't know it yet, but we're already in the implementation phase. And you're going to hear, you may already know, you're going to hear more about some of those things tonight. So some of these things are actually already in progress. Programs. Notice that this is a projected timeline because this is a dynamic, adaptive, iterative plan. There are some ambiguities in here. There are some unknowns that are going to inform where we're going to go, what happens next, what different decisions we make accordingly. But as of right now, spring 2019, administration is planning and implementation of expanded all-day, all-year programs in Children's House and in the youngest children's community levels. That's going on right now. You're going to hear more specifically about that in just a few moments. Over the course of between now, late spring into summer, an exploratory committee is going to be formed to design programs, create prospectus, recommendation, and propose timelines for additional 0 to 3 pre-youngest children's community. So 18 months and younger programming, additional program expansion integrated into the facilities master plan, which you'll hear more about as we go into facilities. So in looking at our 0 to 6-year-olds, okay, it's not that you don't see Children's House up here. It's important to know that part of the intentionality of moving through this plan and the way that we've chosen to do so methodically is within mind of keeping optimization and refinement of all of our current programs in the forefront as well, and not pulling resources away from what's happening to plan a future state. We want to do so such that everything is working in conjunction and optimized. And so this is not more YCC, this is pre-YCC. So that's that prenatal to YCC to Children's House that encompasses the full first plan of development. And then this work has already begun, but design work continues to identify extracurricular programs that find intersection between our mission and market to make a regular part of AMS programming at all campuses. Beginning in the fall of next year, 2019, an exploratory committee will be formed to design programs, create prospectus, recommendations, and propose timeline for a high school program at AMS. That potential program expansion will be integrated into a facilities master plan that we're going to talk about later. So I know a lot of you have been asking me about this in every single Coffee with Grace since I arrived. Design work for 0 to 3 and design work for a high school are all going to begin in earnest within the next 3 to 4 months. Okay. And then moving into spring of 2020, we're still in program. Sorry, some of the other timelines are just one slide. This one needed to be 2. Administration will explore potential all-day, all-year expansion to levels beyond 0 to 6 years old. Moving into the fall of 2020, explore optimization of our adolescent community with consideration of agricultural components, boarding, enrollment, and the implications of a high school. Moving into the end of phase 1, translate all current and future state programming needs into facility needs for integration into the facilities master plan. Now, let me say something else about the timelines as we move through. They are fluid, They are projected. Where you see an entry occur in the timeline is when the work is to begin, okay? I'm going to pan out into something that I should probably have told you from the very beginning as we got into the nuts and bolts here. It's in a later slide that we'll revisit. The way that we are going to sort of manage the implementation and execution of this overall project is that the Board of Trustees has already formed what we call an implementation committee. And it is the implementation committee's charge throughout the duration of the implementation and execution of the plan to facilitate, delegate, moving all aspects forward. So, for example, with regard to the exploratory committee for the high school, the implementation committee would come to me and say, Gray, it's time for you to form your committee to design the high school. Tell us who you need. Tell us what resources you need. Tell us what finances are going to be in place. Give us a projected timeline. And then we work together very much like a project management situation, right? We work together to move through those things, okay? And so the implementation committee will have a report to the board at our monthly or every 4 to 6 weeks in our board meetings. And we will craft, we have not yet crafted the specifics of it, but we will craft a communication mechanism for the overall community so that you are getting frequent and periodic updates of progress as the initiatives move forward. Okay, so programs, going back to the master level here, you see now you can interpret this a little more easily. Programs over the course of the 2 years, design committees are designing all new programming. We're doing our enrollment feasibility studies, as mentioned before, looking at our facilities assessments in terms of current facilities, integrating new programming, and looking into crafting a future state of what the school may look like going forward. Now, let's move into our next category, which is facilities. And this one is just one slide, doing the whole bit. And that is beginning in the fall, conduct an analysis of our physical assets on all 3 campuses. We're going to look at moving over the course of next year, identify facility needs based on our current program definitions at that time, based on the information that we've gotten from our enrollment feasibility studies, all of the information that we can identify what our optimal facilities are with consideration of those things, then bringing into the fold, looking at our new programmatic goals and how does that inform what that holistically looks like, and then, of course, moving into creating a facility master plan that brings all of these elements together and sets forth how we can go about creating them. So now moving back, you can see a summary, a summation of those things along this timeline, and you can see how these 2 things in parallel, and really all of these things, are interrelated. All right, moving into communication. Communication and connection. And these you have visited with before in the priorities, and some of this work has already begun. And in summer, craft and implementing a clear and cohesive practice of communication across the entire community, and establish a research-informed, multi-platform marketing plan. This one, straight from the priorities, clarify our mission, vision, core values, and philosophy statements, as well as craft, implement, and embody a comprehensive plan to infuse these elements throughout the entire community. Much of this work is already underway. We hope to have it fully articulated as we go into next school year. This is more the external piece, create clarity in our identity, what we stand for and what makes us distinct. And then moving into fall of 2020, begin to address some of our opportunities with regard to diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice within the community. Going back and looking at that with related to the other aspects, and moving into our 4th category. Here we have, for sustainability, a strategic review of all of our campuses, define our enrollment requirements to realize our current state, start looking at our enrollment requirements to realize any future state that we have designed for ourselves, implementing practices, best practices in strategic enrollment management. That used to be called admissions. It's no longer called admissions. It's called enrollment management. As we move towards the end of phase 1, and a lot of these new program definitions have been designed, we know what they're going to take. We've looked at our facilities. We know where we want to go with all this. We will begin crafting a strategic financial plan towards our future initiatives, making sure that we've identified the resources necessary to get from point A to whatever point we determine we're going. And then culminating in define optimal whole school enrollment model considering market sustainability, attrition factors, and future state. Now, let me say a couple of things because I know it's going to come up in the questions. Well, nope, let me wait. I'm just kidding. Because I forgot I'd done this slide. So as you can see, you have in phase one a lot of interdependent categories that are working in refining and development, whether it be optimizing what we currently have with regard to facilities, enrollment, programming, number of classrooms, future programming design that we want to add, sustainability, all going to come together, moving us into phase two, which is going to be the execution of those elements that have not already been executed. Now, I say it that way to say this. So if someone had the really understandable question of, okay, so when are we going to start a high school? Right? The answer is, we still don't know. What we have committed to with regard to high school, and we're going to use high school as a lens to answer this broader question, we're going to start designing it in the fall, okay? Now, how we design it and what we decide, and this doesn't have to be high school, it could be the, the prenatal stuff, it could be the 0 to 3 programming, any of it this allows for. As we design it, define what it's going to be, define the program, that's going to determine where it fits in to this larger picture. So I can't tell you, oh, it's not going to be until 2023. We may realize that we have capacity, or with a few small steps, we could have capacity to execute or implement some of these things along the way. And that's part of the adaptive nature of the plan. We have to do the planning and the design of all those components before we can decide exactly what it's going to look like. We know that we don't want to piecemeal different programs together and hope that we arrive at alignment kind of by happy accident, right? Because we want to do so within the global context of current state, keeping what we have optimized, knowing what we're planning in addition, and seeing how those whole things can fit together. Because if you'll go back to the vision statement in that mission imperative, I feel like it is yes, it has fiscal implications. It is our responsibility to offer partnership with families who are expecting children to partner with them if they are willing to help facilitate child and family development from then all the way to adulthood. That's what we're setting forth to figure out how to do. When each element's going to happen, we don't know. The reason that we divided it into phase one and phase two and left a healthy 2 years for phase one is because we wanted to leave ourselves enough time to identify resources and perform all the associated diligence with doing this planning, with designing the different programs. Could it go faster than that? Yes. Might it take that whole amount of time? Yes. So we left ourselves enough time and divided the plan accordingly so that we could execute it as such. How this works as the accordion comes in and goes out, we don't know yet. Moving forward. So here's some strategic work that's already happening. You heard me say before, the implementation phase has already begun. And that is the board level strategic planning implementation committee has been formed and they are operational. Thank you to, with gratitude to our incredibly generous community, over the course of the last 2 years at our auction gala, we've raised $105,147 for our future fund towards this initiative, of which we have $65,828 left to begin our work. We have resources to start tomorrow. We're ready to go. Thank you for that. Expansion of all day, all year programs. That's been the work that we've been working on behind the scenes right now. So for those of you that don't know, we can announce that we're going to have another all day, all year community opening at Sunset Trail in Cypress Cottage beginning in June 2019. That's 2 months from now. We're going to open an all day, all year program at our Great Northern campus in the Pomegranate Cottage community opening in August of 2019. We are currently in the planning phase for an all day, all year youngest children's community at our Sunset Trail campus. Perhaps multiple ones. Not going to lock myself down to telling you when that's going to open. It's opening soon. We anticipate over the course of next school year. It's in the planning phases. We have purchased the 5002 Sunset Trail, which now connects that whole campus, which opens a whole new world of possibilities. We have a new communication structure, some of which you're starting to feel the effects of, still being planned and implemented and refined. We hope to have that honed in on and roll it all out completely by August. We already have a comprehensive marketing plan in process for the school. That is well underway. And planning continues for extracurricular programming at both Sunset Trail and our great northern campuses. Now, so in the information that I've shared with you, that future state of the school is in there. That is prenatal, something that's called NIDO in Montessori, which is an infant program, expanded youngest children's communities, expanded all day, all year offerings, meeting the demands of the families that we have today. Looking at that programming across multiple levels beyond the first plan of development. Continue to adjust our enrollment and capacity accordingly, in accordance with our enrollment feasibility study, in accordance with the demand that we have for the school with our new communications and marketing plan that's going to go out, with the articulation of the future state and new programs coming online as we look at where those are going to be. What's the school going to look like? Don't know yet. But we know what our goals are and we know what we're going after. And here's the thing. It's going to take all of us to help realize the future state. It's not just administration. It's not just board. We need dedicated individuals with skills, interest, expertise. We are going to be forming different committees around different initiatives and different kinds of things on an ongoing basis as the implementation phase really gets underway post-summer 2020. So those of you that are interested in being a part of this in any other way, shape, or form, please reach out to me and let me know. I may not be able to even share with you in the very beginning in what capacity that might be, but knowing that we have hands ready to be on deck is useful and helpful to us. I know that we did this with our steering committee and our working groups, and many people then said, yes, 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 I'd like to help you once we get to implementation phase. Well, now is that time, because we are about to embark on a bold new journey for our school, using that vision statement, using these mission imperatives to see if we can't articulate Austin Montessori School as a holistic institution that serves the needs of children and families all the way across the child's developmental life. We want to connect in a more deeply with our local Austin Montessori, our Austin, Texas friends and neighbors. We often joke that we are internationally renowned and locally unknown. Shame on us. We ought to. And that's not just for the purposes of increasing enrollment. That's for the purposes of community outreach, being a known and established entity within the community, providing services for folks that couldn't otherwise afford them, whatever those resources could look like. All of those things are on the table, and they're things that we're looking at. We want to serve as a model school in the Montessori world. We want to serve as a high fidelity school for the children and families that we have here now, for the children and families that we have here in the future. And we want to get to the point where we do not, by definition, put our families in the position of asking themselves, when do we have to leave? That is what we wanted to present to you this evening. I'm certain that there's a question or two. We'll open it up for questions and discussion. I'm sure there are things that I meant to say that I left out that will come up in questions. If you have questions and you're live streaming, you can put them in the comment section, and Amreen will make sure they get asked out loud. People in the room, I will forget this 100% of the time. Remind me to repeat the questions that are asked in here so that they can hear them on the live stream. Questions? Quit.
Thank you, by the way, to everyone that's been involved. It's quite impressive and very exciting, and just seeing how the process unfolded is very encouraging. We have our topics coming up on 2.5, and so we're new to the community. And when I see this, I think that I'm going to ask this question from the context of kind of how can we support this, or that's where I'm coming from with this. But one thing that I look at with this is thinking, how do we as a community execute on this, besides what you just said, which is so important, about asking the whole community, and it takes a village. Like for example, how does the leadership that's working on this have enough time to be currently operating the school and also plan the next phase of the school? Are there enough resources there currently, and how will that be changed to manage this process so that it's able to do both of those?
That's a great question, and I'll repeat it. I remember the first time. A parent in the audience was appreciating the work that was done and acknowledging the vast undertaking that went into it. And the question was really in the spirit of how can we as a community support this, most specifically looking at current leadership and their involvement in sort of operating current state. How are we going to allocate resources and being able to execute this going forward, and how can we support that? So there are a few layers to that question. First off, one of the things that has enabled us to even get to this point is we've had to build capacity, even in administration and setting systems up and so forth, that have enabled us to be able to, perform, the necessary support tasks and the administrative roles that we have in terms of supporting our current state programming and so forth, which is still and will be our primary focus if you're looking at sort of resource allocation allotment, right? But we have shared roles and responsibilities, and we conduct ourselves temporally and time management wise accordingly thus far. That said, going forward, it's about to get a lot bigger. There's no question about that. And so, that informs how we prioritize things across the timeline and are realistic about it in terms of what we can accomplish when, which is one of the reasons that we chose to make phase 1 2 years instead of 1. Not only because we don't necessarily even know what we're going to find in the planning stage, we don't know what else is going to happen along the way that's going to pull our attention and resources elsewhere. And so we had to set up an adaptive structure to be able to accommodate for whatever comes before us. Secondly, that's one of the reasons also that we wanted to do this and solicit volunteers through committee work, where it may not be that, for example, a layperson can be at the core of the high school design team, because that doesn't make a lot of sense, no offense. But for a lot of the sort of the executables that'll come out of some of that committee work in other ways, it's just human resources that we need to help be able to carry things forward. A lot of that we have not specifically identified yet. But so I suppose the synthesized short answer to your question is that we've built some capacity to be able to allocate resources to do this. We've got board level committees involved. We're going to have subsets of ad hoc committees involved so that the responsibility for the execution doesn't lie on the shoulders of 1 to 2 to 3 individuals. It's a collective, and we'll mindfully move through it. And if we reach a point where we see that we have bandwidth issues or capacity issues and we need to make some adjustments, we'll adjust ourselves accordingly. I tend to be really enthusiastic and go, oh yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll do that, and then we'll do that, and overpile. And we were really careful this time not to do that, to create the framework that we felt like was realistic and have the operational part of that framework be adaptive by definition. And so that's the way that we're going into the plan. I can't more specifically answer your question just because we don't know the actuals yet, but structure, framework, awareness, and mindfulness is really how we're approaching that. And so the other piece to that, to the first part of your question, is we're going to ask for help when we need it. And once we've identified what some of that stuff is, we are going to reach out to our community, because all of this, to the extent that it can, should be an act of co-creation, not something that rests on my shoulders. Now, there's no secret that I will be me personally will be the linchpin in many of these things in terms of kind of me and the implementation committee, but that doesn't mean that that's all I'm going to be doing and running around and chairing all 5 committees and doing all that stuff and not available to see to the current state of the school or anything of that sort. Amreen.
The live stream participant asking, what do you expect funding for expansion in facilities and programs to look like? Capital campaign grants, endowments, Or was there a discussion with Ian about how to fund expansion efforts?
Oh, I see. That's a good question. Oh, I don't have to repeat it because they.
Well, maybe for the one of the
Okay. So now ask me that again. I just lost my thought.
What do you expect funding for expansion?
Oh, right. Of course. So here's how we've built that in. The questions about how do we fund, the expansion and those kinds of things. So we're really excited because we are in an elevated position that is not typical in that we've got a nest egg to start with. We've already got resources that we can allocate that will very much cover a lot of the design work. That's on y'all. Thank you for that. Part of what that work is, even the ongoing work for phase 1, okay? So some additional work that we know in phase 1 is we're going to have to do some facilities modifications for the new all-day, all-year programs, both in Cypress Cottage and the younger children's community, for example, and then going forward. So what the board will do as the implementation committee is coming back and giving regular reports, they will prioritize and create categories in our operations budget to be able to allocate for some of those things during the next fiscal year, for example, if there are facilities improvements. And so all the work, our fiscal year runs from August 1 through July 31. So the work that's completed over the course of next year will inform the budget for the following year. Now, that said, any major expansion that is implied here, whether it be high school and the associated facilities, some sort of campus configuration and new facilities, new classrooms, name it, that is going to be more than tuition in our operations budget is going to cover. It just by definition. I mean, what we're looking at once we get to that point, we're talking a major facilities upgrade and expansion with programs. So what the specific costs that are going to be associated with it, obviously we don't know that yet, but we do anticipate having, and you may remember in, I believe the very last slide, you saw sort of the end of phase 1, a strategic financial plan. So planning how we're going to resource our future state planning is going to be a part of phase 1 as well. But one can assume it's going to encompass many of what the questioner talked about. There's at some point, there's going to be a capital campaign where we're trying to raise additional funds for the future state that we've defined. With regard to grants, benefactors, donors, all of those things are going to be on the table. We're going to have to identify. We're going to need resources in 2 broad categories. Very, very simply stated for this plan. We're going to need human resources to roll their sleeves up and help us do some of the work. And we're going to need financial resources to help make some of those things possible. As soon as we've gotten to the point where we feel like we have got a comprehensive, cohesive, concrete vision, we've created a strategic financial plan and have concrete ask, we will likely partner with a firm who assists us in raising the necessary funds through some sort of capital campaign or the like to be able to resource and execute those things. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice just a little bit. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So, to caveat, I completely agree with. I love it.
That's good to hear.
But go back to kind of where you're analyzing, from high school to the YCC to Green Hill. It's like what kind of like market research did Ian do or anybody do? I'm like, what's the demand for those programs? I know it's strong from an anecdotal standpoint, but like, was there any sort of like holistic data that he provided or that you guys gathered that showed us that like this is the direction that we should go?
Yes, and then there's still some more work to be done there. So in Ian's report back before we got it. Oh boy. Yeah, thank you. And I told you you're going to remind me every time. In our work with Ian or otherwise, did we get actual market data or demographic data that informed the demand and how we can configure some of our programs? That close enough summary? So in Ian's report back to us, part of the work his firm does is not just data gathering on the school and the constituent survey. They do an abundant amount of market research in Austin, demographic data, that slices vertically and horizontally and all kinds of different variables. So we have that data that he came back to us with before we even started planning. We have we have some there. We have a marketing firm that we've a marketing group of MBA students from UT, and we're also beginning to partner with a different marketing group that's going to give us additional data. Also, one of the first pieces of in our sustainability category that we're going to do next year is really centered around enrollment. You saw some slides about an enrollment feasibility study and best practices in strategic enrollment management. The recommendation, and likely where we're going to go with this, is to partner with a consultant expert in independent school firm around enrollment feasibility, where they'll come in and do some even more targeted to around the locations we have our current campuses. Do we want to reconfigure this? Do we want to move something? Here's where the market data is giving you. An additional piece of data that we have there, I think in 2018, AISD did a comprehensive survey that you can actually go online and see a lot of the data. And so we have pieces of data that we need, and we need a few more, but that is going to definitely inform a lot of what our that future state is going to look like. I should say too, though, you've reminded me of a couple of other things. Demand for our younger children's community is higher than it's been since I've been here. We have a wait list of over 40 right now, just at the South Campus. Our parent-infant community is over full, and we don't even advertise. This is all word of mouth. We want to advertise, but one of the reasons that we haven't been broadcasting ourselves is because we don't have capacity. We don't want to say, "Hey, come here," but you can't get in. That's not a position that you want to put yourself in. So that's all the indicators are good there, but we do need some more concrete data. But let me say something too that you didn't ask this, but it made me think of it. It's really easy and I'm not picking on high school. I'm just using this as an example because it comes up all the time. To get really excited about high school. Yes, we should. High school, go high school. Finish the loop so we don't have to leave, and that's important. No question about it, and we want to do that. But we need to look at the school as a whole and look at, again, first of all, from a sort of strategic nuts and bolts standpoint, what does the enrollment model need to look like, to be able to sustain that all the way through if high school is going to be on the top. More importantly, where do we need to put our emphasis, focus and priorities to best support our families, which implies partnering with them early and supporting that first plan of development. Our goal, here, I said this in the coffee with Gray the other night. A lot of parents, when they come to our school, they didn't have a Montessori background, right? Many of us didn't go to Montessori school. I came into Montessori in my 20s. And so when they come to us later, they're thinking about school, and we're not school compared to, in terms of the way that they think about that. The way that we can most successfully partner with families to best support them in raising their children and subsequently support their children is partner with them early when they need the most support and when they're thinking in terms of human development, because that's what we're thinking about all the way through, not translating midstream. So there's that paradigm, but more importantly, that's where families need the resources the most, right? And so we want to look at that holistically, and we see when you look at our school as an institution, the populations that we are underserving are the bookends, the 15 to 18 and the prenatal through 3. And so we wanted to give equal focus there. Not that we're not focusing on high school, but in terms of priorities, we wanted to look at it holistically. Other question? Amreen.
Okay. I understood the plans for 0 to 6 years and high school program very well. Can you please elaborate more about the plans for elementary? What kinds of process improvements?
Yeah, I'm glad somebody asked that. And that was just saying that what has been articulated here is largely about 0 to 6 and the third plane. What about current programming in elementary and so forth? And that was just how much information do we share in one sitting kind of thing. With regard to our elementary program, current Children's House, current elementary, current adolescent community, we will continue to work to support and refine it. We'll continue to look at how that needs to be reconfigured or expanded with any new future enrollment implications. We're going to be looking at any potential program alterations, for example, to include an all-day, all-year track in the elementary, early and upper elementary. That's on the table for looking at. So it is looking. So we've been talking and focusing about the beginning and the end, but the holistic focus is on input, throughput, output, which is beginning at the beginning, continue to optimize what our current state is, what we offer, continue to support and nurture and grow our programs. Probably going to be some expansion implications in terms of the numbers of communities in elementary. If it stands to reason, if we expand our youngest children's community, we improve attrition at Children's House, we got to broaden the pipeline. Most Montessori schools or even small independent schools, their enrollment model looks like a triangle, meaning that there is a broad, a number of children that are there as young children. As the children get older, there are fewer and fewer, just like us, 6 children's houses into 3 early L's into 2 upper L's into a middle school. But if we put a high school on top and we establish a broader foundation, we hope to widen that. And so to be able to have a full optimal enrollment, matriculation opportunity, that program expansion and changes of numbers of classrooms and so forth will be a part of that as well across the different levels. Question from the room. Question from the ether.
Does your analysis of programs include programs to support children with learning differences and special support needs?
Yes, it just wasn't articulated in this presentation. That's not actually part of the, I suppose just as the function of the strategic plan articulating the future state of the school, yes, it's something that we're actively working on as we speak right now. I'm unclear as to whether I need to repeat it for the people on the live stream if it comes from the live stream. Should I? No, do they need? They don't need it. Okay, that's what I was asking. That's what I was asking. Just tell me what to do. Oh, okay. Jeff, your hand up.
It wasn't really a question. I just wanted to say thanks to you and the board and everybody that's put so much effort.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I should have begun with this, but I don't have the words to express gratitude, enough gratitude to all the people that have worked on this, all the people that have enthusiastically been involved and engaged and coming to things and asking questions and offering ideas. It's really been overwhelming in the most positive way. It's been rewarding. It's been frustrating. It's been a grind. There's been elation. It has had the entire human experience poured into crafting all of this. But I am really, really excited, personally excited for the work that we've done. I'm excited for the vision and direction that the school's headed in. I think it captures everything that we need to. I think it's very much in keeping within the mission and tradition of Austin Montessori School. This is not going to water down what we already are. It's going to clarify, articulate, and enhance what we are and build upon it. And so all of that feels really, really good. I've never in my life been as excited to come to work as I am right now. And that's the truth. Most days. Other questions? Terry.
Is there, other than sending you an email saying, yeah, count me in to help, is there going to be any sort of structure about here's kind of what we need, these kind of people, so that my gifts and talent can be best suited in a particular area, other than, hey, I'll help you, and you kind of get to something I don't regret about.
Sure.
Could have really been helpful over here.
Right. And that's a really good question. The question was, what are the steps in identifying what help is needed and how can people get involved? Or do I just email you randomly and say, yeah, I want to help when you stick me somewhere? The work now really is going to be for the implementation committee to sit down and craft exactly what you're talking about going forward. And that's going to be, okay, what is on our timeline for the remainder of 2019? What resources do we need? What deliverables or executables are we going to have? Or is it going to be ongoing? Do we have a finish line? And then what resources and particular skill sets and expertise do we need? Whether it be, is this something that we just need human resources to do and go and perform a certain set of tasks? Do we need expertise in a certain level? We're not at the definition point of that yet. What we do want to do. So the short answer to your question is, if you're interested in helping, sure, go ahead and email me now. It can't hurt, right? And I'll keep a running file of that. But we do want to be very intentional and profile the help that we need intentionally. Intentionally. That's good. And we just haven't identified those specifics. That's the very next step after tonight. The implementation committee is board chairman David Spence, who's in the room. David. Board vice president Maggie Walsh. Chris Howard, board member, is on the implementation committee. Dawn Mihal, the director of operations, and me. Amreen.
Okay, I think this one was addressed, but just one more time. Will there be an all-day, all-year program for elementary and beyond at some point?
It is going to be explored. We don't know. I cannot say definitively at this point, but one of our imperatives from our strategic priorities is to look at exploring all day, all year at other levels. I think it's quite likely that an all day, all year track, at the very least through elementary, emerged through all of this, but we don't have that concrete of an imperative at this point. Yeah, go ahead.
How and how often will there be further strategic plan communication updates?
Great question. I meant to address that at Terry's question, actually. That's another thing. So what we're committing to right now is that there will be a regular and intervals feedback mechanism to the overall community, updating you on progress. What that's actually going to look like and how frequent it's going to be has not been determined yet. I think that you could probably expect monthly or bi-monthly. It's not something that you're not going to hear about for 6 months, kind of how the plan has been. You knew it was happening, then it seemed to go dormant for like 6 months. It's not going to be behind the green curtain work. This is something that we want forward-facing and out there. We want people to be excited about. We want people to be engaged in. So there will be communication to the entire community at regular intervals. We're looking at actually having a new section of our website devoted to the strategic plan, outlining the plan, its progress. And so there will be lots of different ways to connect with it, but we will be providing regular updates. Just don't know the specifics of what that's going to look like yet. Other questions? Have I left anything out? People that are in the room that are where I've worked on this with me. Oh, okay. You have any more? Is everybody kind of on the same page? This is where we should go? What's that? All the pages. Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for being a part of it. I know this was a lot to process. I'm going to pass out the strategic priorities booklets to the folks in the room. If you're online, we'll have them at both campuses available for you. We'll also put it online. We have a PDF version for it. The print versions are a little bit hard to read. My letter's a little, if you wear reading glasses, you might need to power up I'm going to need to. But look forward to hearing a lot more about this going forward. We'll have a display, hopefully at the gala, talking some more about the strategic plan for folks that couldn't be here. You know what I'm really, really excited about is being in meetings from this point forward and not having to say, I can't tell you that yet. I can't tell you that yet. Now we can talk about any of it ad nauseum. So, yes.
So, will we raise our paddle at the gala? Where's that money going to go toward any of this?
We have not honed in on what we're going to do this time around. We're certainly open to any suggestions. It feels, to me, I'll just be frank, it feels a little open-ended to do future fund again, although you kind of see what it's going towards, but we haven't honed in specifically on what we're going to do there yet. It's a good question. The question was, what are we going to do the raise your paddle for at the gala with regard to this?
You've got 65K sitting there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be nice to have a little more. So if you're saying you're open to future fund, we can do another future fund. Lois.
People, if they just have money burning a hole, like donate, regularly to the future fund?
Oh my gosh, what a great suggestion. Someone in the room just said, hey, if you have money just lying around and you want to donate to future fund, that donation is a restricted pool. It can only be used for this. You don't have to wait for an opportunity to raise your paddle. You can just write a check. It is. So the annual fund and even the funds that we raise at gala are general use, to understate it, fundraising in terms that can inform our operations and a lot of the things that we talk about with regard to ongoing operations, facilities repair, financial aid, unrestricted funds. Whereas anything that we raise through the Future Fund or any targeted strategic planning initiative, whether we launch a campaign or you just come in and say, I want this to go towards the Future Fund or to strategic planning, those are by definition restricted funds. And the only way the school is allowed to spend those by law is towards these strategic initiatives. So that is an important distinction to make in how that is different from just annual fund or just the general funds we raised at Gala. So, and as you can see, we're going to need funds on an ongoing basis at this point for really exciting things. Anything else this evening?
Go team.
Go team. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all at home. Here we go.